Of all the things that are surprising and shocking around the idea of using psychedelics to help people with their mental health, today I'm going to talk about something completely different. The number one most surprising aspect of this healing modality for me was how much I resisted it. Let's get into it. Hi everybody, my name is Jill. Welcome back to the Journey Sage, and this is the channel where I talk about my experience of healing childhood trauma-induced PTSD with psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. And this is one of two videos talking about what I found to be a very important subject for my own healing, and that was how much I resisted healing. And I think if I had known that I was going to resist it that much, I would have been a little bit better prepared. So today I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about why the resistance was there, and then I want to talk about how it looked in a woman in her late 40s who was a competent adult who, was adulting very well. All right. So first of all, why did the resistance exist when I was already in therapy? I signed up for this particular therapy modality. I did my research. I was working on my intentions. And yet this internal resistance existed that I figured out after my second journey. But we can talk about that later. Here's the thing. If you've been in therapy, you've heard the concept of inner children. My way of thinking of my inner children is very much trauma points. So like seeing my mother after she shot herself when I was 5, being thrown out of different homes when I was 10 and 16, and a variety of other memories. But 5, 10, and 16 are major inner children in my world because for a long time they had unresolved trauma. Those inner children, or Jill of those ages, came up with survival strategies. Very often it was not to react to my father being abusive. Very often it was overthinking to get out of a situation, to come up with a good alternative. There were certain survival strategies, 90% of them mental, that I always thought got me through my childhood and made me into an adult that, at least on the surface, seemed to be functioning pretty well. Those inner children, for me, did not trust one adult. There were multiple times in my childhood where adults understood the neglect, understood the abuse, not only didn't do anything about it, but in some instances came back at me and asked me exactly what I did to deserve that kind of treatment. So my inner children, my inner trauma points, didn't believe that adults would help, and didn't even believe that Jill as an adult would help, because me as an adult, I was an adult. That's all that mattered. I grew up basically knowing that I was the only one who was going to help myself, and all of my inner children had that firm belief. So the idea of getting help from my doctors, my therapist, my guide, remember I use those terms interchangeably, they were other adults and they really weren't going to help. So that's kind of the internal talk track that my subconscious had. I did not know that. I had no idea that talk track was going on. Here's how it looked in late 40s adult Jill. Here's how it looked going through the therapy. Number one, I'm not smart enough to heal. Even though academically I've always been fine, even though I don't think healing from PTSD has anything to do with intellect, it was totally just an insecurity on my part and an easy way for my brain to kind of pick on me and say, stop doing this work. You're not smart enough. It's not going to happen. Number two, and this one was really unpleasant. This one was a lot of tears. My doctors are going to drop me. They're going to figure out that they're helping someone who is a fundamentally mean, cruel person. They're going to figure out I'm not worth it. They're going to figure out I'm not smart enough. They're going to figure out I'm a waste of time. I mean, put anything in that blank. My doctors are going to figure out, and they were going to stop working with me. And that brought up a lot of tears because, here I had two people who were very willing to work with me and help me, but my internal talk track was making them out to be the villain. It was too expensive. And I'm doing quotes because the irony here is that I had been paying for talk therapy for a number of years. It didn't have anything to do with the price. It was that I didn't have enough inherent value to go get this therapy. It was okay that I kept talk therapy. This therapy wasn't okay. I'm telling you, my brain worked really hard to convince me to stop working with this particular therapy modality. And then the biggest one, the one that was, I think, probably the most scary, is what will my life look like if I am healed and I don't have these survival strategies that I've used my whole life? Am I going to crumble? And it was a very specific thought in my head about my work ethic and my grit. I mean, one of the things I'm able to do is plow through projects, get stuff done, move things forward. And I had a real concern that if I heal my trauma points, am I going to just kind of like stop having a work ethic and just kind of want to hang out all day? And all of a sudden that's going to lead to losing a job, not having financial security, being out on the street, which is something that I was constantly kind of faced with as a child. And so that was a huge, huge fear. I will tell you that isn't the case. And I learned kind of in incremental steps that really wasn't going to happen. So there you go. My internal reasoning as to why I felt the resistance. My inner children did not believe that anybody could really help or anybody would help. Would being a really important word there. And then secondly, giving you kind of how my mind was actively working with some really unpleasant thoughts to stop me from healing. In the second video, I share with you the strategies that I use to help me overcome the resistance, because even very much right up to the journey days, and remember I went through 3 psychedelic assisted psychotherapy journey days, even up to the third one, I was still experiencing resistance, but I was able to realize what that was versus just kind of believing my thoughts. And so if you want to hear or want to read about my story and actually see the resistance in real time when it happened, that's where my memoir, Rescuing Jill, comes in. Rescuing Jill and the workbook are both on Amazon. Head on over to thejourneysage.com for more information and resources in general. And of course, please feel free to post any comments down in the questions down in the comments. And I'll see you over in video number 2 about resistance.